You're listening to the Uplevel Your Online Business Show, where wealth is empowering, purpose is crucial, and high vibes are non-negotiable. And now, here's your host, certified business coach and practical woo strategist, Sarah J. Loureiro.
Welcome to another episode of the Uplevel Your Online Business Show. This is going to be a really interesting episode that I have been contemplating for a while. It was actually inspired by something that one of my aunts had told me a few months ago while I was with her. And yeah, I just want to clear the air for the whole idea that we should be saving all of our money for retirement and what my perspective is on that and what I actually save for instead. So this is obviously for entrepreneurs. So if you are someone who works a 9-to-5, might not be for you. It also could be for you. And I'm going to explain to you who I do believe should really be, or quote unquote, should be really saving for their retirement, and why there are a lot of careers that don't necessarily need to be saving in the same aspect, right? In the same respect. And hopefully my goal for you with this episode is to rethink a lot of the things that we have been taught over the years in our childhood, in our adolescence, and even in early adulthood and adulthood that don't really make sense for our generation. And so I'm sure if you are listening to this, you have probably heard someone in your life tell you that you need to be saving for your retirement. You've probably, if you're like me, you've probably done the FIRE calculator. So, you might have your 401k, you might have your RRSP. If you're in Canada, we do RRSPs. If you're in the States, you do your 401ks and your Roth IRAs and all of that stuff. And I'm not trying to bash any of it. I think that it's all really, really great and wonderful. What I am trying to question is the concept of retirement itself, especially for someone who's an entrepreneur. And especially for someone who is a digital entrepreneur. Now, we've been told throughout our lives that we need, the best thing that we can do is for our investment portfolio is buy a house, right? Because especially for me, in my parents' age, buying a house was the best investment that there could be. And it was such a great investment for them. But as we've seen with the rise of housing prices and with the basically stagnant wages that we've had as millennials, you see that it's no longer the best investment for everyone. In fact, there's a lot of places, especially places like really big cities, where buying is no longer even an option. And so many people have to rent. And so there's actually been studies and graphs and all different things that you can take a look at that show that some people are actually better off renting than they are buying. In fact, I do even have friends back home who are making loads of money and they decide to rent. They don't decide to buy. And there are also financial analysts and financial educators who say the same thing in specific housing markets. Now, what applied to our parents, what applied to different generations no longer applies the same way to our generation. And so it's really important that we do our own homework and get financially educated ourselves in order to decide what realistically is the best option for our age group. What realistically is the best option for you in specific? Maybe you do decide that you want to save all of your money for retirement. That's totally fine. This episode is to make you question the things that you have learned in the same way that it's made me question the things that I have learned. And I'm so, so grateful for a greater financial education where I can actually take a look at all of the numbers and metrics and understand what is going to work the best for me and my family. And so I was basically raised off of the mentality that you invest in a house. And so it has to be a house. It was usually for me, it was in Ontario. And you just invest as much as you can in mutual funds and in your government savings that are going to help contribute to your retirement. Because once you retire, you're no longer going to be able to work. That's the whole preface of this entire ideology or this entire methodology, is that once you retire, you will no longer be able to work. And I just want all of us just kind of sit with that for a second, because what does that actually mean? And have you seen people in your life who have retired but have actually wanted to continue to work? Because I've seen that every single day. And what I do know is that my parents ended up retiring really early, but they still work, and not because they have to, but because they want to. Because doing nothing with your life is actually quite boring. And there are also a lot of retirees who lose their sense of purpose when they retire because they lose their identity, because a lot of their identity is tied up in what they did for work, because work isn't just work, it's actually a life purpose for so many of us. And when I think about that, and when I think about my dad who's retired and how bored he can get and how much he needs to have something else to do with his life, then I think about retirement in and of itself. And I think, well, is that even something that I want to aspire to? And the thing that my aunt told me that really inspired all of my questioning of retirement was I asked her if she planned on retiring because she is of that age. And she told me, Sarah, why would I want to retire? It doesn't make any sense to me. I like my job. I love going to my job every day. And, I could just take time off. I'm not retiring. That's not something that I even want to do. And I was like, imagine that. Someone who doesn't want to retire. And it really made me think about everything that I was taught about needing to save and needing to save for that, theoretical cliff that you're just going to jump off of one day, where one day you're going to be working and the next day you're not. And I think a lot of people save for that theoretical cliff, and a lot of people don't understand that our life is now. Your life is now. Our life is in the present moment, right? This is also why so many people become entrepreneurs, and why I've spoken to so many of my clients who have decided to take the leap into entrepreneurship, is because we understand that our life is now. And so we don't want to wait to have to travel until we're 60 or 65. We might not even be able to travel. We might not even be able to do all the things that we want to do when we're 65. And so doing those things now and having a really great balance of doing those things now, for me, it's the best of both worlds. And so I'm not anti-saving or anti-investing. What I am anti is thinking that retirement is the be-all, end-all investment goal. And since doing a lot of my own research and just, consuming a lot of books on financial education, one being Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad, absolutely love that book. So if you haven't read it yet, I just feel like that book completely changed my investment thinking. So good. Especially if you're like very beginner at investing or even thinking about your finances. And now I adopt a very different mentality on retirement, even especially after seeing my in-laws and seeing them work into their 60s and seeing how joyful working actually is for a lot of people. Now, where was retirement invented, or what was retirement for? Retirement was invented for everyone in the 50s who was working shift work, right? So many people were working factory work. So many people were working manual labor jobs where they had to literally use their bodies, and they would over time overwork their bodies to the point where, yes, their bodies couldn't work anymore. And for someone like my dad who did construction his whole life, he's not going to work that at a 30 or 40-hour work week anymore. He just can't, right? His body has now worn significantly over that type of job. The same way where I think of one of my friends whose husband does shift work, of course, they need to save for his retirement because he inevitably does need to retire from that type of job because it is very physically demanding. But our jobs that are mentally stimulating, because I won't say mentally demanding jobs, you probably also do need to retire from, right? But when you have a job that's mentally stimulating, as my aunt was saying, do you really need to have that invisible cliff where you're saving all your money for? And then my next question with that is, once you go into that mentality of needing to save and needing to save and needing to save because you want to be financially free and retire early, what happens to your present? what happens to your life that you're living right now? What happens to all of the holidays that you want to take with your children? What happens to all of the holidays that you want to take with your partner? What happens to all of the things that you want to do in the present moment that give you joy? And I think a lot of us forebode joy in the present moment in order to save ourselves into that financial cliff that we're thinking about for the future. And while I love saving and investing, what I don't agree with is saving and investing for this arbitrary day and time in our future where we don't even know if we're going to have our life in the same way that we have it now. And where we don't even know if that's something that we're going to enjoy or if it's something that we even want to do. Do we even want to retire? And I've asked myself this question over and over and over again when I've thought about the difference between investing in my business or investing in assets right now or investing in a holiday. And I always come back to the same thing. If I was completely financially free right now, and if I did my FIRE calculator where I became financially independent and I could retire early, would I want to not work? And my answer always comes down to this. I'm always going to want to work. I'm always going to want to work. And I think for me, a 25 to 30 hour work week is a perfect amount of time for me to work because I love working. Not only do I love working, but when I think about being financially free, it also means being able to do whatever it is that you want to do. And I actually really do want to be doing business coaching. I actually do love coaching. And for people who don't love their jobs, I get it. I get the need for financial independence and I get the need to retire early. I get the need that my dad needed to do that. I understand why my aunt doesn't. And for all of us entrepreneurs, especially for those of you who are coaches and who are doing really impact-driven work, I really want us to all think about this in a different way. Because if we don't need that random cliff that we're going to supposedly, come off of, then why do we need to save everything for it? Why do we need to get to the place where we're like, cool, I have $2 million now and I no longer have to work anymore? And instead, what I present as my new solution and why I'm no longer saving for retirement is instead what I choose to believe is that I'm saving for a time where I can choose to work when I want and where I want, which technically, if you're an entrepreneur and even if you're a digital entrepreneur, we already have, right? We're already getting the choice to work when we want and where we want. But I think it goes a little bit deeper than that because, of course, we're going to have ups and downs in our businesses. We might even have, years where we're not as sharp as other years. We might even have any illnesses that come up in the family, heaven forbid. And so I like to think about my investments and my savings as making sure that I can enjoy this exact same quality of life that I have now, essentially forever, without needing to have my business be the thing that contributes to my lifestyle, which is also why I decide, and it's a very disciplined thing to do, but I decide to not contribute to my own lifestyle creep. And if you haven't heard the term lifestyle creep before, it's basically when you start making more money, you start spending more money because of the fact that you can, and you have to keep up with the Jonases. So all of your friends who are doing the same thing as you, they all start spending more money. And so you see them spending more money and you're like, oh, I want to do that too. And it becomes a societal thing where all of a sudden you're making more money, but you're not saving more. You're not investing more. And if we're not careful with something like lifestyle creep, that can very, very easily become the norm. And then, before you know it, you are making a lot more money, but then all of a sudden you have so much more overhead and so many more expenses that you can't necessarily, you don't even know how you can justify it all. And you're not anywhere closer to saving for retirement or really building assets. And it happens to a lot of people. It is a bit controversial. Some people prefer lifestyle creep and they love it. And they're just like, I just want to enjoy my fancy things. And that's fine. That's not me. And the reason why I wanted to also talk about that is because if you are someone who is wanting to retire or to get to this place where you have financial independence, lifestyle creep is the very first thing that you want to be able to understand and limit for yourself. And so if we are not saving for retirement because we understand that retirement isn't necessarily something, or the idea that our society currently places on retirement isn't something that we would necessarily enjoy. And not to mention, by the time we get to retirement, we don't even know if our government systems are going to still be there in order to give us the retirement that they are promising, because our governments are spending like it's no one's business right now. And so are all of those safety nets still going to be there? I don't even know. I don't even know if I trust that, to be honest. So if this whole idea of retirement is not something that we want to play in terms of this game of going from working all the time to never working again, and not understanding how to bring more fulfillment into our lives once we do hit an older age, here's what I propose and suggest instead. And this is something that I've also spoken to one of my mentors about, and his idea is also really similar. And what he mentioned to me was that he doesn't really necessarily believe that he's ever going to retire. And I agree. I don't think that I necessarily want to one day retire and then just never do work again. Instead, what we choose to believe is that we are investing and building assets for ourselves so that we have the choice if one day we want to close down our businesses, or one day we want to pivot our businesses, or, one day we want to take 2 months off and go to Europe and, just really enjoy our lives without working. If we want to take a 1-year sabbatical, that we can afford to do that we don't have to be stressed out financially in order to do that. And so my new idea around retirement and around saving isn't necessarily for my fire year or for the day where I don't have to work anymore. It's for the day where I can consciously tell myself, hey, do you want to take a sabbatical this year? Do you not want to work this year? And do you want to continuously have all of these other things also generating an income? Yeah, perfect. Let's do it. And not have to think twice about that, because there's so many different systems running in the background that my business is also funded, that now allow me to be able to take time off whenever I need to. New systems and new assets and new passive income that comes into my life and that comes into my family's life and family's day to day, where we're getting a passive income coming in from other sources that aren't the sources that we need to work from, that are helping us to eventually be able to decide and get to decide, do I want to work 10 hours this week, or do I want to work 30 hours this week? Or maybe I want to work 40 hours this week, even though I have $3 million in the bank. It's the choice versus the theoretical cliff of today I'm working, tomorrow I'm not working, and now I'm just not working until I die, that I choose to have. And so I choose to think about my life and my business and my purpose as something where I'm just going to continue to work because I love working and because I truly believe that the path is the goal. And so I don't have a stop date. I don't have a timeline. I have a flow of thoughts and a flow of work that I want to accomplish over my lifetime. And it's not the same as thinking about one number and one age where I'm no longer going to work. Instead, it's just a continuum. And it's a continuum where I get to decide how often and how long I want to be working versus saving for an eventual end to work. And that to me feels so much more inspiring and so much more freeing. And I hope that it inspires you to think about your life and think about savings and investing in an entirely new way for yourself as well, where you get to call the shots and you truly get to create the life and create the intent and purpose for your life that you desire as well. So I hope that you enjoyed this episode. If you liked it, it would mean the world to me if you hit like and subscribe on the episode on your podcast platform. And let me know what you thought of it. I'm genuinely curious about this episode. If you've had these thoughts before, feel free to find me at Sarah without an H, JLOUREIRO. So Sarah J. Loureiro on Instagram. I'd love to hear what you think. And then, of course, if you feel like this would be really inspiring for a friend, send them the link. All right. Thank you so much for listening, and I will catch you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Uplevel Your Online Business Show. If you enjoy our show and would like the show notes and free goodies about how to grow your online coaching business, head over to sarahjloureiro.com for more information. We hope you'll tune in next time.